everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we'll be joined by Eric Ubias, Counsel at Industria Business Lawyers, a leading expert in compliance and regulatory advisory for emerging growth companies with international operations. He has a wealth of experience navigating the complexities of U.S. laws related to trade, investment, digital assets, which make him a trusted advisor to companies across a range of industries, from manufacturing and telecommunications to blockchain and cryptocurrency. So, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to have you.
Oh, pleasure to be here. Very excited.
Awesome. So I want to dive right in and kind of know more about you and your journey to IBL and your current role here.
Pull up a chair. So we'll start by the journey to IBL. And if you had more questions about the career, which was a lot longer, and since I've been practicing for a number of years, we can dive in there. In terms of IBL, I have known Aaron and Alex for a number of years. The first time I met Alex was actually on a panel for a Hispanic National Bar Association conference on digital assets or blockchain technology. And that's where we connected. And it took a number of years for us to find the opportunity to collaborate. But I'd say around 2019, 2020 is the time that I was onboarded and started working with both of them on projects in the space. And I serve as counsel.
Nice. And you talked a little bit about that experience that's kind of brought you to IBL. So we want to talk about that and kind of, if you can walk us through your career journey and what inspired that transition from traditional law firms to focusing on compliance and cross-border trade issues.
Sure. I think it dates back further. So coming out of undergraduate with an international relations degree, and not wanting to do that necessarily, I ended up taking night classes, and while I was working, became very deeply involved in network administration, right? That's everything from the routers and building out networks and having that skill set. It sort of continued that interest in tech, feeling like I wanted to have something tangible, liking that aspect of it. And I still do it today. I had to do some Ethernet cords for my son so he could work on his computer just yesterday. But when I went to law school, there wasn't a specific, let me be a litigator or some necessarily goal beyond the challenge. And I didn't really have the tech aspect part of it. I came out, did well, went to Georgetown here in DC. And it was at a time where you get good grades, you sort of walk across the street and have a number of job offers. And I landed at a fantastic global law firm. And then when I started, the market crashed. This was 2008. And a number of fantastic attorneys were let go from not just our firm, but a number of other firms. And I think the state of the market had changed. And I think that sort of shaped my career there. When you're at a firm, particularly when you're younger, you need to have mentors and you need to have some idea of what you want. And I think that I sort of approached it more defensively, with the debt obligations. It come from a more humble background to make sure that it took care of the student loans. And so saying yes to projects and being indispensable was great. It meant you could stick, but it also meant that I wasn't really focused on what do I want to do, what do I want to accomplish. So I had a number of experiences, False Claims Act and anti-corruption, did some antitrust, and I ended up focusing in the white collar group on government investigations, leveraging the Spanish that I speak for investigations, often in Latin America. And the thing that I liked most was we represented a number of private equity companies where you'd have a take private transaction and the portfolio company that resulted would need to build out the compliance program. And so that was one thing that I volunteered for that I think other people may have liked it, but I really liked working with the executives and doing training and building out those policies and procedures and sort of advising in that in less adversarial aspect. And then you come to a point where what are you going to do next, right? You're at a firm where everybody's smart, everybody's hardworking, but they've been thoughtful about their career. And I realized that I had gaps. If I wanted to do this international presence and advise on these cross-border issues, things like trade compliance, sanctions, anti-money laundering, things like that kept popping up. And in the world of big law, you have hyper-specialization where the practice areas, you need to be able to issue spot, but you hand them over to other specialists, right, at the billing rates that you have. And I had an opportunity to work with a very sharp attorney who I knew from undergraduate, who had a boutique law firm, still does, in the trade space. And they were working on something with the firm that I was at. It ended up being a reported case in the DC circuit. And I was able to step in, not necessarily on that litigation, but sort of to get my chops and sort of start almost as a first year associate on trade type aspects, which you certainly can't do as a senior associate at a bigger firm, and sort of fill in that gap of what was I missing. And it felt like it made a more complete attorney. So we have this traditional approach. Meanwhile, on the side, I spent time sort of looking into this Bitcoin and blockchain technology, right? 2016, 2017. But not figuring out how to monetize it or what to do. I just liked it from the technology aspect. And I can go into why I think that is, but it was when I left from the boutique to sort of start my own boutique that I realized that when you're dealing in the crypto world, it is much safer and better to have other people that are working with you, because it's incredibly complicated technologies across a range of issues. And you want to have someone that you can lean on and sharp teams who sort of have the same approach as you. And it wasn't until that I teamed up with Alex and Aaron that I felt comfortable taking on those types of matters, particularly in light of the enforcement actions that were going on, post-Dow report, and sort of what does it mean as an attorney to operate in this space, bringing your ethical responsibilities to bear and your understanding of the laws, and sort of advising clients in a smart way so they can accomplish goals.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, it seems like everyone got here on a different path, but somehow like the same interest kind of drew them into this space. So I want to move on to kind of what you do when you're advising companies with international footprints, and what are those key factors you consider when, regarding local compliance requirements, and what do you advise them?
So I think I would say for local compliance requirements, we have to stay within our lane as U.S. attorneys, right? So we should be able to issue spot. IBL has a fantastic network of local counsel there, and we work with the foreign attorneys who have matters where they need U.S. counsel. But in terms of the advising, what I would say is I've noticed that before the United States was the gold standard in terms of these legal regimes, and making sure that you could comply with U.S. laws in the world of anti-corruption, for instance, or sanctions or export controls. You could tweak it to make sure you're complying with those local requirements, but you just didn't have that same robust enforcement or built out regimes. And other countries would often look to us. And I started to see that change even when I was, a number of years ago with the advent of the GDPR and the enforcement things. And then I do some privacy, right? Just being aware of these issues, because how can you not when you deal with data? But and that's sort of continued in where we are now with crypto. I would say it was even more the case, right? That you have this sort of patchwork. Yes, you have the securities laws. Yes, you have the commodity laws. Yes, we have the Bank Secrecy Act and anti-money laundering. But when you're someone that's moving overseas, you have to be much more aware of those regimes and being very cognizant of what are those requirements. And you can't just say, I generally have built a compliance program and my understanding of U.S. laws is going to work outside the United States, both because it won't and because you have that more robust enforcement and more aggressive regulators outside of the United States that I'm not sure that I saw, pre 2015, 2014. Yeah. You'd see some, but again, U.S. you'd often see a thing where the U.S. would take the lead and the other ones would sort of collaborate and sort of lean on this. Not to malign any of our European or international colleagues.
Yeah. And then, so let's talk about what you're saying of the crypto space and where it's at now. What are like other most significant regulatory challenges that companies usually face in the crypto space?
I think of it of crypto projects of sort of being like something at the top of the tree, and as you fall, you hit every branch, and every one of those branches is a law that you hit all the way to the ground. One example, just give you something that we don't have to get into the technology, but sort of think about a Bitcoin mining company. They have their usual traditional, do you have your licenses? Do you have your employees? Do you have your contracts? Since they're involved in energy, do you have your energy agreements? There's someone focused on that. The sort of traditional things that, advising in corporate counsel might provide, drug testing and whatnot, right? Then you layer on this aspect of cryptocurrency regulations, and when I say cryptocurrency, I think about it the same way you think about the internet law back in 2000, where it's sort of now there's different aspects of it, but we'll just say cryptocurrency for now, where they need to worry about what are they doing? How are they financing it? Are there any money laundering implications? Do they have obligations to build out those types of compliance programs? What are they doing with the Bitcoin, right? There's additional layer of obligations that they have to layer on. Then you add on an additional, if you're Bitcoin mining, maybe you want to take on a foreign investor. Now you have to worry about national security implications under potentially CFIUS, right? This is the law where if you have a Bitcoin mining company or some data center and is it near a US Air Force base, so there are disclosure obligations. And you're seeing, for instance, in the Bitcoin mining space, they have this capacity, they have this infrastructure. Maybe they're starting to dabble into, AI now, right? And so you think about someone is saying, I'd like to just buy something, have a bunch of computers and do computing power. And you can just sort of see like, what are the sort of the myriad of legal regimes that they needed to comply with. And for bigger companies, they may have the capacity and the sort of financial wherewithal, but oftentimes there's pressure on smaller companies who haven't brought something to market or haven't deployed of how to manage those compliance costs, those risks. How do you prioritize? What are the most important, and how what can you do and sort of make sure you're putting your best foot forward to get your product to market, which puts a challenge on attorneys because we can be expensive. So it's making sure. What I'm seeing now is attorneys are, this idea that we need to hyper specialize. I'm starting to see the sort of the unity of legal regimes where, attorneys are needing to be aware and being able to issue spot for crypto clients across a number of different regimes. And even if they don't necessarily handle it, being conversant enough to sort of articulate, you might have a problem. I can get you so far, but you're going to need additional counsel for these.
Yeah.
No,
yeah, totally. I think it's important to kind of highlight where it's at now, but also like switch a little bit so we can talk about the future and what you see that's going to happen in the future. So speaking on that, how do you envision that intersection between like traditional industries like manufacturing or real estate with blockchain technologies?
So now I have the opportunity to go back to sort of what was the interest in this. And did some articles back in 2018, 2019, like the birth of Bitcoin and sort of the 5 things in-house counsel needs to know about blockchain technology. And generally the technology itself is not new, right? The digital signatures, the hash functions that you use, the distributed or the peer-to-peer networking, the distributed databases, a lot of those are sort of things that have existed for a number of years. What I think the innovation was the coordinating in sort of this adversarial manner, and then thinking specifically sort of the Bitcoin, where you have these players, multi-party players, in an adversarial manner, able to engage in sort of a game theory type contest that secures data. Right. And if, we knew who Satoshi was, that's the type of solution that you might see win a Nobel Prize. Right. The same way that, Nash won it for the Nash equilibrium in the game theory context, because it was something that was innovative. It seems simple in retrospect, but sort of applying the capitalist principles in this type of setting yields outcomes where players acting in their own self-interest sort of secure databases. Okay. Why do I say that? Because oftentimes you look at things like private blockchains, right? Enterprise blockchain solutions. And you say, why are you using this technology? And for a number of years, I sort of thinking like, I sort of thought like, what is the point? What does this do well? Oftentimes it's less efficient. It requires potentially a tremendous use of energy, although that's kind of changed now with the shift from proof of work to proof of stake mining. But, you think, Is it I sort of had three things in mind. Are there multiple players that are involved that might need access to this data? Is there a lack of trust in that? And do you need to maintain data integrity and auditability, right? And when you have those three things that come together, I think that's when you see sort of the best use case for blockchain, that underlying technology. And so we've been talking for a number of years. One of the panel, not the one that Alex was on, but I was another panel where we had someone from Walmart on. They were talking about their blockchain solution for tracing lettuce because it would allow them to not have to destroy the entire lettuce crop. And they were able to say, we're able to trace the particular thing. Or you sort of see all these other solutions in the, Maersk thinking about sort of supply chain management or trade finance, whenever you're dealing with multiple ships and manifests. And a lot of those things have sort of gone by the wayside. I'm not sure that you see the use cases. Now, it may be that it's immature. Where you do see the use cases in payments and money, and which is what the original insight was, that there's some incentive in the adversarial space. And so what I would say is, when you think about cryptocurrency or digital assets, you sort of divide it. What are we talking about? Are we looking at back-end underlying technology solutions like blockchain technology, where people don't want to have to think about it and it's sort of deployed and you do your updates from your computer and it's sort of handled by the IT people? Is it the crypto trading where individuals have these assets, potentially, like NFTs or art, and they want to interact in that way, or gamification of it? Or is it more payment rails with like stablecoin? And I was just at the DC FinTech, and there was a panel on, we had Visa and PayPal people talking about the potential changes that are coming, where you have traditional financial players coming into the space, and what are they looking at? Are stablecoin within appropriate guardrails, might that be a potential solution where you see more movement, where you take fiat into stablecoin that allows you to transfer cross-border across multiple players and then come back out in fiat or stay in stablecoin? So you sort of want to think about it's not just no longer cryptocurrencies or digital assets. You're sort of dividing it. What is the solution? What is the problem? And I think that some of the things that people used to talk about in 2016, 2017, they may still come to fruition, but they often are niche cases, that audit, traceability, things like that. I think there's still potential value there. It can be challenging to implement and deploy those things. But obviously it'll be more in the financial incentives, where you have that public blockchain layer that sort of creates that secure underlying network that you can kind of come into and out of for your own private uses or deployments.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Everyone I've spoken to has like a different take on it, so we'll see what happens. But to wrap up, we wanted to know a little bit more about your personal interests and kind of what your hobbies are outside of law.
I would say the biggest one this year, and it's taken up a lot of time, was I started doing triathlons.
Oh, nice.
So that would be a whole other session, because I've gone off the deep end in terms of understanding. But I would say that probably in 2022, post-COVID, it came to a point where I didn't feel healthy, and the doctors would sort of repeat the same thing. Just to give you an idea, I was maybe almost 50 pounds more than I am now. And I spent a year, doing the Gold Gyms membership, and a year later, not seeing much more difference, and your health dashboard sort of flashing red lights. And I come from a family, a Mexican-American background, where the guys just don't live long. Heart problems or cancer or other things. And I promised my wife that I would try to live as long as possible. And now I have a kid too. So we're sort of thinking about like the health of what am I doing, and being stronger and trying to deadlift 400. It wasn't getting me where I needed. I used to like to run, but didn't have that motivation. So I was in the gym one day and saw a little post-it and said, "Hey, you want to try a triathlon?" And it was like a very baby one, 12 laps in a pool and 2-mile run and a 7-mile bike ride. And at the time I just had a 3-speed, one of those sort of heavy ones that you see. So gave me something to sign up. It was very cheap to sign up. You didn't have to have anything. Bring whatever you want. And it was like 12 laps in a pool. I think I realized that I didn't really know how to swim properly. I knew running was fine. I also didn't know how to bike properly necessarily. So I did that one. I liked it enough to say, I need to set a bigger goal. So this year I've done a few different short course triathlons. Long course ones would be more Ironman, or half Ironman, where you end with a marathon. The one I just did, I ended with sort of a 10K. So it's almost a mile swim, 24-mile bike ride, and, sort of the 10K run. Sort of hit my goal. I realized, I need to increase the fitness. But learning those 3 disciplines and sort of diving into the geeking out on, like, for instance, with bikes, I'm thinking about gear ratios and cadence and rolling resistance on the tires that you're using, or how can you improve your aerodynamics? Can go off on that. For swimming, it was realizing that I didn't know how to have the proper form, right? You can get across the pool, you can hold your breath for a long time. But when you're swimming, maintaining that horizontal plane, and as you increase your speed, being really thoughtful about your technique. So I spent a lot of time. I'm very good at learning things from the internet and reading books and things. So I haven't had a coach or anything. Maybe when it's time to do one of the bigger ones, the Ironman, I might try to get somebody. But for now, I'm kind of happy where I am. But that's kind of been taking up a lot of my time. And with my kids just starting cross country, we're able to do some of these things together.
Awesome. Well, congrats. I mean, that's a huge, accomplishment for your health, and, for you to find a new hobby and something that you love. Well, thank you so much. We're so appreciative of your time, of your insights, and we're so excited to have all this information. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Bye now.